wrote that prayer psalm that God can seem far away in times of struggle. And while in that prayer pours out to God the problems, it also confirms God's faithfulness, and it affirms that God will bring justice, and God will bring rescue, and God will be praised. When you are struggling or discouraged, I encourage you to reach out for the Psalms to give words to your prayers. Read Psalm 22, and along with David and Jesus, ask, "Why are you silent, Lord?" Or pray with Psalm 13 that asks, "How long, O Lord, will I wrestle with my thoughts and every day have sorrow in my heart?" These Psalms can lead us in prayer and guide us in taking our needs and our concerns to God. And then these Psalms and these prayers can lead us to affirm our faith. So, like in Psalm 22, it ends, "But I trust in your unfailing love." Or we can pray along with David in Psalm 6 and say, "But the Lord has heard my cry for mercy, and the Lord accepts my prayers." The second thing that I want you to be able to hold on to in times of struggle is that Jesus entered into our human experience not just to relate to us better, or that we could better relate to him. God entered into the struggle because by doing so, the pain and the oppression and the corruption and death were defeated. It's not just gratuitous suffering. It's suffering that accomplishes something. God is at work in our suffering. God uses struggle to accomplish that work of bringing justice into the world, that work of bringing maturity to our faith, perfecting our faith. And when we pray, "Thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven," that prayer is not just a wink and a blink and a click of the heels, and then peace and justice come in. That prayer is part of being invited by God to participate in that kingdom coming work, that hard work and struggle and sacrifice that go into that kingdom coming on earth as it is in heaven. We need to be banging on judges' doors and on God's door in prayer. We need to be feeding the poor even as we pray for daily bread. We need to be forgiving those who hurt us even as we ask for peace in our relationships. We need to pray and ask God about how we should be investing our resources, our money, and our time in supporting God's work in the world, and be prepared to hear and heed what God says back to us as a response. In this past week, I have encountered struggle in a number of ways. Yesterday, I went with Will and Nancy and Dar to a seminar on human trafficking. Human trafficking right here in Wisconsin. And one of the leaders who was sharing with us, who's part of the Coalition for Anti-Human Trafficking in Wisconsin, said that the average age of people who are being trafficked has decreased. And she said right now the average age of people who are being trafficked is 8 to 14 years old. We heard stories about people who are used and exploited right here in southern Wisconsin. And we learned ways to struggle with them and for them to bring justice. Earlier this week, I met with a homebound member of the church who has tremendous struggle and discouragement, a burden of pain, a burden of caring for a disabled child, and yet because I had been wrestling and struggling with this story of Jesus, I could offer words of encouragement, words about being persistent in prayer, and that Jesus invites us to persist in prayer and in faith, and that I could pray alongside her in that struggle. I reminded her that she could have a ministry of prayer. This week also brought extra discouragement and struggle to our whole presidential election process. And I heard several people share that they were just ready to give up, ready to just close their mouths and not vote. But we are called by God to stay in that struggle, to pray and to work for justice, to pray for our leaders, to be tenacious, to persist. The church board met this past week, and it was tempting to feel discouraged at moments as we considered decreasing attendance due to people's life changes and the likely financial challenges that would be ahead in the coming year. Just in the writing of the sermon for this morning, there was struggle for me as I struggled with the text, as I struggled with my computer that died when I was halfway through, and that struggle that took me from thinking first about persistent prayer to really looking at that struggle that lies beneath why we have to persist in prayer. And so my prayer for you is that in any struggle you have in this coming week, whatever God calls you to wrestle with, that you can hold on to those two things. That God is right beside you in that struggle. So talk to God. And that God is using that struggle to accomplish a good work in you and in the world. When the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on the earth? We have a friend in Jesus that we can take everything to prayer. And we're going to sing that song and affirm that we have that friend.